Hey mathematicians, gear up as today we learn how to use multiplication to help us calculate volume. Let's get into it with our I will statements.
Remember, your I will statements are your goals for this lesson. They are what we are trying to work on and learn more about throughout our time together today. As we continue on in our lesson, make sure you have your mind focused on these three things and showing them to your teacher. I will read the I will statement first, and then we will read it again a second time together. Make sure you're reading it nice and loudly so I can hear you, but no shouting necessary.
Listen as I read. I will define volume. Read that one with me. I will define volume. Our next one. I will add layers to a shape to represent volume. Read that one with me. I will add layers to a shape to represent volume. And our last one, I will calculate volume numerically. Read that one with me. I will calculate volume numerically. Nice job, mathematicians. Let's get into it with our warm-up today. We are going to use our first shape here to work on finding the volume of a multi-layer prism using multiplication. First, let's find just the length, width, and height of this rectangular prism, and you're going to add it to your recording sheets. Let's first look at the length. The length is how many cubes are across. 1, 2, 3 cubes go across the face of our shape. That means the length of our shape is going to be 3 centimeters. Now let's find the width. The width is the side of our shape and how many it goes back. I count 1, 2 on the width. Let's add 2 to our width. And our last one is our height. The height of the shape is how tall the shape is, or how many cubes up we can count. Let's count the cubes. 1, 2, 3, 4. The height of this shape is 4 centimeters. Let's record that on our recording sheet now. We can break the shape up into different layers. Let's talk about if we sliced it in layers according to its height. So if we sliced it in 4 slices across like this, we would have 6 pieces in each of our slices. Let's record this on our sheet now. When we look at each of our slices, we are going to look at the length and width of each of them. In this case, the length and width of one slice is 3 by 2, which means the cubes in each of those layers would be 3 times 2. So we're going to record that in our first row. When we look at the number of layers, we want to count how many layers we sliced it up into. That equals our height as well. Since we slice this one up into pieces by each of the height cubes, it gave us 4 different layers. Now that we have these two to find our volume, what we need to do is multiply 3 times 2. Hold it up on your fingers. What's 3 times 2? I should see 6s up on all of our fingers. 3 times 2 is 6. Then we need to do 6 times the number of layers we have, which is 4. What's 6 times 4? Everybody call it out. 6 times 4 is 24. So we would add that to our volume part of our chart and add centimeters cubed on the side. Let's slice this shape up now by the length. So we're going to slice this into 3 different pieces lengthwise, just like we see on the screen here. Now that we've sliced each of the pieces lengthwise, the face of our shape has changed a little bit, which has altered the amount of squares in the blocks. Originally, when we cut it up, we had 6 squares in each of our layers. Now we have 8 squares in each of our layers. Let's see if that affects our volume. And let's fill in our chart for this last layer that we chopped it up into. If we look at one of these layers, we can see that it's 2 by 4. That means cubes in each of these layers would be 2 times 4 to figure out the total number of cubes in one layer. 2 times 4, everybody, is what? 2 times 4 is 8. Nicely done. The number of layers we cut this up into was 3. Remember, we cut it lengthwise. And it gave us 3 pieces. Let's multiply 8 times 3. Call it out in 1, 2, 3. Did you say 24? 8 times 3 is 24, making our volume of this shape still 24 centimeters cubed. No matter which way we chop up the shape, we still have the same amount of shape there. We've just chopped it into a different amount of layers. We can also cut our shape, our rectangular prism, widthwise, which means we would cut it into 2 different pieces. Let's talk about how we would find the volume of this shape, filling in our table similarly like we did the first 2 times. First, let's find the area of one of the shapes. To find the area, we would need to multiply the length times the width, which means we would need to multiply 3 times 4. 3 times 4, everybody, is 12. Let's write that in our first part of our table. Then we need to look at the number of layers we have. Since we cut it up widthways, we can see that we have 2 layers here. So we would need to do 12 times 2. What's 12 times 2, anybody? 12 times 2 is 24, making the volume of this shape, even when we cut it widthwise, 24 cubic centimeters. We can use the information in our chart up here to write an equation that helps us find the volume of this shape. When looking at it, I found out a pattern that each of these equations that we used in this table, we can multiply all of the different sides to find volume. So if we know the area of one of the faces and we multiply that by the number of layers, we can also find volume. But the number of layers is also just the length. So if we know the length, width, and the height of the shape, we can just multiply those all together to find volume. Let's write the equations we did in our actual problems based on our table. In our table, we had 3 times 2 for our first chopping up of the rectangular prism. We had 3 times 2, and we chopped that up by height-wise. So we chopped it into 4 pieces. We also found out later that we just multiplied that together. So we have the length, the width, and the height here, and that gave us an answer of 24 centimeters cubed. In our second section, we cut up our rectangular prism lengthwise. So we cut it up into 3 different pieces. Even though we cut it up into 3 different pieces, we still solved it the same way by multiplying the length, width, and height together and getting 24 centimeters cubed. And our last one, we cut it widthwise. So we cut it into 2 pieces. So we had 3 times 4 times 2. And that still gave us the same answer. So when solving for volume of a rectangular prism, the only 3 things you need are your length times your width times your height. And that will give you the correct answer for your volume. No matter which way we wrote this, it's still a multiplication problem. So it still gave us the same answer. You're going to continue on finding more shapes and calculating volume numerically. Also remember the strategy of using the layers like we did. You can still do that to help you find your equations, but it's important to note that if you're given the length, width, and height, you're able to just multiply them to save some time in finding your volume. Good luck, mathematicians. I'll see you guys soon.